Hello all. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Pleased to introduce the next episode of Space Store's Insights Live, and this is a panel discussion around designing trust as we look at the return to the workplace. We'll be having a great discussion with our panelists, and very privileged to introduce Daniella Bird, Michele Osborne and Santamaria today, along with my colleague Gordon MacDonald from Space Store in the New York region. So maybe we could just do the intros. So I'm Nick Baxter from Space Store, MD in the UK, and the Space Store are creators of awesome workspace furniture. We're constantly listening to the market, and we want to provide the best for what today and tomorrow's users need. And if we carry on from there, Daniella, do go ahead.
My name is Daniella Bird. I'm the design director and founder of Space Positive, based in London, UK. I'm passionate about how space can have the potential to positively impact people. So I believe in designing and implementing a healthy agenda into the built environment. And I see this as aiding the physical and mental well-being of its occupants. I have over 10 years of interior design and consultancy experience. I've worked with clients in a number of different sectors, including banking, advertising, manufacturing. And my second passion is education. So I've had the privilege of working with a number of schools and universities. Prior to this, I've been in project management and training. So again, I've been working in a number of different sectors, including utilities, management consultancy and retail. So my perspective is fairly broad.
Superb. And you're based in London? You're based in London, Daniella?
So yes, yeah, I'm based in London, yeah.
As I am. Good. Sorry, Michele.
Yeah, no problem. My name is Michele Osborne. I'm an associate principal with Perkins & Will, which is an architecture and design firm. And I am based out of our Chicago office in Chicago, Illinois, in the US. Really, a lot of the last 3 months we've been spending with our clients, working on some immediate return to work plans, and really including the physical distancing, signage, and the change management aspects of that. But also looking forward to what's next, and especially if you're in the corporate interiors world, you know, what do we think is the future of work, and what do we think is going to come out of our post-COVID world that we need to think about that's new. So I'm excited about the conversation and the questions and the things you might want to discuss today, but really building in that sense of trust into our workplace is a really important part of our business, and will be for the foreseeable future.
100%. Yeah, superb. And Maud.
I am Maud Santamaria, and don't be fooled by my French accent. I am based also in London. And work for Mace, which is a construction company. I'm under the branch of the operation, which is the facility management part of the business. And my role is a workplace experience director. Funnily enough, is at the moment the experience is at home and in the office. So at the moment we're working with clients to return to work safely, and building that new environment that is, you know, the best for both parts really. So looking forward to today as well.
Yep, excellent. I think there's a great lot to discuss here, and we'll be inviting questions throughout the session. Gordon, just give us your bio.
Sure. So I am Gordon MacDonald, based with Space Store, based out of our New York Design Center. I am actually working in our Philadelphia factory. Thankfully, we've been able to stay open, and it's been a great hub to work out of during these unprecedented times. I work with a lot of our large end user and A&D firms, and especially excited to join this panel to get some insights constantly was on phone calls today with some end users who are asking, what does the return to the office look like? So looking forward to the thoughts and inputs of the rest of the panelists here. And yeah, looking forward to hearing all the great insights and hopefully take something away that is going to help move the conversation forward.
Superb. Well, for those who have joined in the last few minutes, we're just kicking off on the Space Store's 11th live panel debate around the challenges and questions and possible solutions, especially today around designing in trust as we look at the return to the workplace and as we reflect on the work from home great global experiment that's been going on. So some of the front of mind topics are empowering employees, that sense of trust, and the differing needs of the business and individuals. And one of the topics which really interests me is the human connection. The human connection of our team and those we usually come into work with, and we have informal conversations and interactions. It's not just set piece meetings, formal interactions. You got some thoughts around that, Daniella?
Yeah, I think if you're going to be, some of the things about coming back into work and building that trust, we were looking at kind of communicating to ensure that people have that sense that they know what to expect when they come in. They may be daunted about that. As you said, it might be that working from home is one of the things that they want to continue to do, and then you're looking at why do they want to come back into the work, what they're going to be expecting, and what will they benefit from. There may be many people that are kind of needing that interaction right now, and this is where the organisation is going to be benefiting, kind of have that benefit for them to do that. But as you said, we're looking at kind of also considering how organisations can be caring for them, really looking at the situation that individuals are going to need, whether it's going to be, they may want to come in at different times, different hours of the day, whether they want to travel at all. Obviously concerned about the kind of the journey that they have into the work, and then what happens when they get into work, what are those, how they're going to negotiate interacting with their colleagues when they do get there. So it's like looking at the communication side of things and really having compassion and care about what's going to happen when they come into work.
Yeah, I think that's a massive point, isn't it? Care.
And I think as we look at particularly that immediate return to work, we see a lot of our clients, larger corporate clients, where there are a lot of knowledge workers, not as much connected to equipment that's on site, that are really making this process voluntary and trying to be very transparent about that when you come back into the office, that coming back into the office is a choice, and that it is something that you need to make a decision on your own, related to your healthcare, your anxiety levels, your, just even your commute into the office is different, particularly in our urban areas, where a lot of people are taking public transportation. So there's so many factors in determining whether or not you are ready to come back. And I think, at least for our larger corporate clients, there is much more of a tendency towards making this a voluntary process. And I think that's smart, and that's a smart way to view it. Not everyone has that ability, obviously. If you work in facilities or something that actually needs to be on site, there are some trade-offs there. But I think that's a nice trend, and I think a good leading with compassion approach to coming back into the office that's been great.
Yeah, and I think care, we have to recognise, don't we, that there's some very, very keen to get back into the office, the workplace, even with its challenges. And there's some who are very nervous and fearful about what the risks might be going back in. It's interesting that some of the studies out there show younger generations struggling more working remotely or working in a distributed way than the baby boomers have maybe got more space a bit further on in life. Maybe the facilities are actually easier for that work from home. I don't know, Maud, what do you comment?
Yeah, no, I think this is quite right. I think there is a direct link into generation and potential income as well, which then also tailor to the place that you live, potentially sharing or you know, being on some places where you not have the possibility to work truly and focus from home. I would add a classification as well for parents, and that's interesting now that all of the, you know, nurseries and school are starting to reopen. So you almost have another sort of survey to do, or pulse survey if you do this, which is now that things are starting back on that front, are you actually willing to go to back to work? If, you know, if you were asking this maybe 2 weeks ago when everything was shut, parents would have said, well, you know, I can't go back to work because I've got my kids, or maybe I'm desperate because I have my kids. But it is interesting now that the trend is changing again, almost as the weeks goes by. So that's something I think people should look into, some of surveys, maybe employee engagement.
Yeah, I think you can also view this in terms of level of tenure as well in your career, right? Folks who are in the process of building a network, right? Maybe younger in their career or newer to the industry, you know, maybe still trying to build a lot of their professional networks and their contacts and that kind of stuff. And that's a very challenging to do in this time period. Whereas there might be more satisfaction with working from home for folks who are more ingrained in the culture of their company and in their own professional network. So there's some fear of missing out, right? Career is passing me by, you know, things that I think we should really consider. And while we, you know, how much of that has to do with space? I mean, a lot of that is the reason why folks want to come back into the office, is to continue to make those connections, the informal ones that are really just hard to do in this environment and in over Skype calls, right? So
Yeah.
I think we're hearing that from our younger staff in our own office or newer staff and at our client sites as well.
Yeah, I echo that. I was on the phone to a business development person at a large furniture dealer in New York this morning, and his comment, he was out on Long Island, but his comment is that, you know, how do you network in a time like this? And, you know, he was just on the start of his career. He's only been 5 months into the job, and, you know, everything has completely been turned on its head. So I certainly think we're going to see a lot more of the younger generation wanting to get back together to build their careers back up. Everybody's going to have, you know, there are going to be those with a gap in their resume that say, hey, where were you in early 2020? But how do you, and Michelle, I'll direct this to you from an A&D perspective, how do you see a company retaining its culture? You know, it's always a challenge because we spent a lot of the last 10 years preaching culture, preaching, you know, retaining and attracting talent. How do you see that fitting into this conversation?
Yeah, you know, I think obviously we've got a short-term issue here to look through about just keeping everyone healthy and getting them back into the office. But I think your question is more about the longer term of how we're building out our spaces and what kind of activities we're trying to support in those spaces. And you know, in our view, we're going to get a new opportunity to really redefine why people are coming into the office. And that may differ by company, you know, as well, in company culture. But what is it that sort of drives people into the office now that we don't have to, right? Now that it's not required that you come in every day, because we can get work done virtually. And I think it'll actually give us an opportunity to sort of reallocate space to more of those social and culture building activities, whatever that is for your company, in order to to really make the workplace a place that that you want to come to, not because that's where your computer is, but because that's where your people are. And I think that's exciting. That could be a really a great new future for the workplace, is really honing in on making it a place of culture building.
Yeah, I think that's good. It was interesting. So I worked from home for 10 weeks before we were allowed, the office staff was allowed back into our factory here. And the first thing that hit me was the sound of the forklifts moving. Commerce is still happening, business is still happening, airplanes are still flying. We often look at 9/11 as a case study, especially in the East region. A lot of large, if you look back and Google back on articles around that time, a lot of people were saying, are we really going to go back to these major cities after 9/11? But somehow we're resilient people and we're creatures of habit. How are we going to embrace that this time around? Maybe you can give us some insights on that, Daniella. Just being able to embrace almost kind of a sense of trauma, but then also to say, wait, we can overcome. Sorry, go on.
As you said, this is an opportunity. I think one of the things that we, from an organisational perspective, is actually learning from all this, having some elements of preparedness. There's we can send out surveys and understand how it's impacting people. It's kind of obviously going back to the effect on the staff members and the occupants of the building. But what we can learn, we haven't experienced anything like this in our lifetime, as you said, from the 9/11 experiences that you did. What did you learn out of that? Was there something that you could have taken away and prepared for the COVID? And as you said, nothing seriously had changed from that. So I think the level of engagement with your people, what you can kind of learn from them, what they want, what they're actually looking for, how can you adapt your operations to allow maybe a bit more of an agile and resilient environment, so things can be moving a lot quicker.
Yeah.
I think something else that we saw, at that time, people who were in the design industry, in the construction industry, we had to put on another hat, right? Design and security, right? And we all learned a lot about security in that time frame, right? As we are trying to, again, design in trust into our space from a security standpoint. I think now we're also putting on another hat of health consultant, and really learning to partner with our, with our local health authorities and with experts in health to separate, again, the things that might be window dressing to health and things that are truly making us more well when we are in our space. And that's a trend we've seen really over the last 5 years. And I think we're just going to see that take off, is that we're designers and looking out for the health and really getting educated and be smarter about that the same way we did around security.
Yeah, you mentioned about health, Michelle, and that we're learning so much more, bringing so much further research about the physical as well as the mental well-being and the health of the benefits of healthy buildings. And so I think we can learn so much more from the experience that we've got from COVID. And it was more over a conversation that we were having, but now building in that the agenda of health into the environment. I think that's where we should be kind of focusing on, because that's part of the preparedness. What do we do? And as you said, the security, the level of safety that people are going to be feeling is completely different to how we've kind of been working in the last number of years.
It's interesting, Michele, that you use the term window dressing, because we almost have the two sides of the story. We have things that may not be necessary now, but then are like so perceptive for the user coming back to the space that you almost force into doing it.
Yeah.
And then of course the part of health safety that we all had to learn. But it's interesting to see how much the perception of a safe environment might actually not reflect what as a workplace team and an FM team on the hard and soft services that we could provide should actually do. And that sort of now, you know, coming up front and have the cleaning team visible, where maybe, you know, before that would have probably be something you would try to not hide at all, but, you know, trying to maintain as a low level. So it's actually interesting to see there's almost both sides to say, don't do too much and don't overdo it. Trust the employee to come with already that sort of mindset. Yet some companies would push that sort of, okay, let's do extra stuff to make sure the perception is very taken care of.
Yeah, that goes with the communication side of things, isn't it? When you're not talking to people about trust and what they're expecting to when they come into work, and not even just coming into work, to be able to travel and to be able to move around. People want to see things. They want to, as you said, they want to have things that are visible. They want to see the hand sanitizers. They'll want to be reminded. You know, people have got into a certain behavior, and when they come back to work, those behaviors are going to be looking very different. They're going to be feeling very different. So it's sending out reminders, communicating that things are, you know, if you're sharing equipment or utilities or, you know, facilities, there's going to be things that are going to be, you're going to have to act and respond in a different way. And so, you know, communication is key to just reminding, even when people are kind of, they have been working there, they've been in buildings, and they've had to go back earlier than a lot of other people in the building. Their mindset is possibly still how they used to work, and that needs to be changed.
Yeah, and do you think, Daniella, that communication is two-way, isn't it? It's making sure we listen to all those concerns, and they vary so much. Concerns about risk coming back in, but concerns about mental well-being, working alone or working in very confined circumstances. What do you think is jumping a little bit, but a very good question from audience member. And we do welcome all questions. Keep sending them in. Got some good ones coming in now. So all attendees, please send your questions. But there's one, what are some of the more cost-effective ways to create a better environment and experience, build trust in the team and show you care? So cost-effective ways to improve and demonstrate this care. Any offers on that one?
I think one of the ways that you can do that is, you know, people are having to adjust the way that they're communicating with their staff at the moment. So while they're working from home, it might be that you've increased your weekly team meetings by Zoom. You've had one-to-ones. That should continue, even if you're coming into work. But it's mainly showing that you have a level of care, so you can find out on an individual basis. You can, you know, you obviously can find out from an organisation perspective by sending out surveys, but calling people and listening to what their needs are, understanding what their environments are going to be like. You know, we're thinking that we understand the level of cleanliness in our own homes. We know what we're doing as individuals to protect ourselves and reduce the risk. But when we're leaving our home, what will happen? But some people actually may find that they need to get out. You know, it is something to do with along the lines of your mental well-being. You need to have that space, and not everybody's going to have that. So
absolutely.
That's considering.
Same thing, yeah. Sorry, Daniel. Sorry, you carry on.
And also, just to, you know, for example, in schools and, you know, universities, you're hearing people that are trying to study. They are locked in these rooms, and they don't know what they're expecting. So it's, you know, it's that finding out what people, listening to people, what they need, and kind of considering that they may have had. You know, they may be living with vulnerable family members. They may be suffering from anxiety. You know, there's a number of different things that you can do within without having to spend increased costs, actually really care about and building that trust. People, when they do want to come in, or they do want to come in, they feel that they have an employer or their senior leadership team are really caring for them.
Yeah, and I think that to that same point, you know, doubling down on training and helping people get up to speed on how to work in distributed teams is going to be really key for the future, to just make sure people know how to use all the tools that are available to them. Because to your point, there are going to be folks who, for a variety of reasons, are not going to feel comfortable coming back into the workspace. And I think one thing we're worried about as people start to come back into the office here in the US is, are we going to start to create an us-them mentality, right? Of people who are coming back into the office who maybe don't have those same concerns versus people who are staying at home because of childcare issues, because of health issues, because of vulnerable folks in their family. And so a cost-effective and easy way to sort of help with that situation is making sure that folks are trained and know how to use all the tools available to them to make sure everybody stays in the loop, you know, as we do this. So, and man, we have all appreciated our technology teams and the, you know, immediate pivot that they had to make as soon as we went to stay at home. You know, I don't think any company is not appreciating the challenges and the flexibility of their IT departments.
It may also, I think, sorry, Maud, go on.
Oh no, I think I completely echo that. I was thinking about different ways that either my company or some clients have gone, you know, in a very low-key manner, but it is kind of the webinars. And then I've got a company that has actually done two things. So they have went directly to their supplier and say, you know, you guys are the supplier of cleaning product normally. Can you do a quick webinar on how do you wash your hands? Or so something not actually, you know, costly, and actually the supplier do like this. So they would pre-record something and then, you know, kind of show that, or we had some lovely caterers that have, you know, create a quick, this is how you do something nice for the family, and you can have it for a few days because some of the moms maybe or the parents were overwhelmed. So that was a good one. I think rely on your suppliers that are maybe experts, so you don't have to maybe book like a webinar and an expert that you may see. I think suppliers are always great and they always want to share their innovation. And then actually within your business, you'd be surprised to find that you have a person that would be, you know, an expert on something. You know, there will be a yoga teacher on the side, or they would be, and I think sometimes you could just also pull those levers to say, actually, guys, did you know that Michele is a fantastic cook, and today she's sharing the recipe for homemade breads, and you know, and I think this is kind of a bit of team building, and then a bit of like, okay, we'll show you, and you can push this if your IT team is busy, because I think they were all at some point to actually create those support, right, those tools. If they're busy to create those training teams, then you can ask maybe some of the younger generation actually to say, could we do a reverse mentoring and quickly show me how do I use, you know,
Right.
like a team banter, but also maybe Microsoft Team. So I think there's ways that you could do not that costly to try to share what you already have, share what you have in your organization.
Yeah, that's really good. Got a couple more questions here, and I think there's an important one, that the different layers of nervousness or confidence or need to come back to the workplace. There's another side point there, that it's not returning to work, is it? It's returning to the workplace. We have been working. And there's different levels of confidence or nervousness around that, and Joe in the audience just posted a point about extroverted people may be more willing to come back, find that easier. I think there's personality types is a complex topic, isn't it? It's not binary, but there's something in that there's a lot to consider. It's not this or that, it's nuances or degrees of trust, and a progressive thing. Do you think, Michele?
Yeah, I think there is, I think the most important piece, and usually with any communication. It's about transparency, and it's about transparency that anything we're doing and putting in place in our workplace does not make it risk-free. You know, reasonable measures are being put into place. They're being done in accordance with local guidance and national guidance and all those kinds of things, whether it's your health authorities and others. But we need to be transparent that it's not risk-free. And, you know, in helping others try to get their plan together for coming back into the office, we've been focusing on sort of 3 different aspects. One is the social distancing, right? Plan analysis. What do you really need to do? How many people can come back into your office and set that maximum capacity? The second part of that, though, is personal behaviors, right? That doubles down on the communication that we were talking about before. And those things like washing your hand and etiquette and understanding the symptoms and stay home if you don't feel well, that's critical to this. And that third piece is the cleaning. You know, and understanding what your cleaning protocol is and what are you going to change as you come into the office. So it really is a multi-pronged issue and an approach to helping people feel better about coming back into the office. But again, there's going to be a whole bunch of things we can't account for, and that's why we've got to continue to be really good at working in distributed teams and making sure everyone stays involved.
Yeah, and what do you think, any of you, about distributed teams? And you might say work from home is growing up. We kind of we experimented overnight. We were thrown into it, but we're finding ways to get good at Zoom, hopefully, or even webinars and WebEx and Teams and so on. What can companies do to help their distributed staff?
In terms of from a digital perspective, and as you said, we were talking about the educational side, but it could also be providing the working environment at home. They could, you know, you could provide better seating, for example. You know, we've all been sitting on kitchen chairs and any chairs that we can find, spaces, and it might be that you can, as organisations, provide guidance on setting up your working from home. What provision that they can be doing. Might be that you're creating a working from home kit, so that means, you know, they not only have the laptop and the phone. It could be that you've got the stand, the wrist rest, and your chair and your desk. That would show employees that you've really thought about their physical well-being. You know, you're also looking at part of that is the educational side that we were saying, kind of increasing or enhancing what information that they have in working from home, and what it will feel like when if they do and when they want to come back. Yeah,
and I think there's the physical arrangements, the facilities at home. I mean, a big one, I saw a study earlier that's come out this week, and quality of broadband is a huge one, isn't it? Big factor. Quality of the seating has emerged. I think someone mentioned it very recently. Did you comment on that?
Yeah, and I think I know we were talking about this yesterday, and the Leesman Index, which is a leading indicator of workplace satisfaction, has started some of their findings from their work at home survey, and that gap between how important the chair is and how satisfied you are with that chair is much bigger than a lot of other physical features of the workspace. So we've made such great strides in the workplace talking about the importance of ergonomics and how that you know, really contributes to our effectiveness at work. And it did sort of all get thrown out the window when we went home with that. And then everybody's at different levels of being able to provide and buy their own, which many people have, but you know, but then there's an inequality to that. And I think that's really, there is something to address there, and address quickly and really easily in most cases.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think sometimes, again, I think the suppliers that you may have, it's interesting to kind of dip into their knowledge as well. So I know as an FM provider, we would normally help within the office with the furniture and the package, potentially DSE assessments, providing. And I think right now we're actually trying to help our clients for the same at home. It is difficult, you know, we have some clients that are all across the world, so there are disparities into the standards and what people expect. But I think, you know, it's something that you could try to rely on your supplier that are willing to make you keep going. You know, we all know that it's not your job to, as a client, to take care of all of that. And even, you know, to the well-being that we were discussing, not all managers suddenly can turn on the compassion button and become, you know, the sort of like psychologist or, you know, auntie and you pour it all out. So I think, you know, to try to see if there is a supplier that can help. And I know there's a lot of my industry actually is really looking into how we can help our clients also on that front, you know, try to make them like a very frictionless way to have all of their services, but at home, you know, let's go crazy. Let's push the fact that why don't we just make the coffee available to their home, you know, why not?
Yeah, and isn't that all part of an equality around a hybrid environment? A
Yeah.
hybrid model, work from home or distributed working, along with time in an office, which really the workplace isn't a physical place, is it? It's really becoming a more complex network of facilities in different places for different functions. And we want to expect a certain equality, whether it's coffee and tea, good quality ergonomic chair, a desk which meets my needs, wherever I may be on different days.
Aircon today, that is very hot.
And I think to a point that was made earlier about, you know, having choice in different locations that you might go work, right? We have lots of clients, of course, that have offices all over the country, all over the world, in suburban locations and urban locations. And, you know, and we've seen this trend towards choice of people choosing where they want to work because they have a laptop, they can do that and have been able to do that for the last 10 years. But seeing that accelerating to maybe I will choose to work in my my company's suburban location because I feel more comfortable there, or I might choose to work in the urban location. And we may see some changes in real estate and you know, sort of that hub and spoke model of where people have to work. But it really all comes down to about choice, right? And allowing people and having the trust and giving the trust in your employees that the work is going to get done. You know, and let's create this wide variety of settings, whether that's inside of your office or in different offices, to help accommodate that and help people feel more comfortable and more convenient, quite frankly. We've all found a lot of this to be quite convenient. You know, and not having to commute. So there's, you know, trying to feed all ends of that.
To add to your point, Michelle, there's been there was a recent article about how people are now looking to work and to move out of the cities. You know, there's been a big drive on relocating because people have realised that their employers are giving them that level of trust because they've had no choice to be able to, that they have to work from home. And now they now see the opportunity to move out of the inner city areas to places where they'd feel more comfortable. If this ever did happen again, where would you most want to work? This has given people time to reflect on, you know, what's important to them, and where they want to live and where they want to work, has provided that kind of a moment of shifting, you know, in thought and kind of what's important for people.
It also has big impacts potentially for employment, doesn't it?
Yeah, for recruiting, for hiring, and again continues to make the market even more competitive. Is that I'm not just competing for talent in my local area, I'm competing for talent across the country. And so what am I doing, you know, to make my workplace and my workplace culture, you know, attractive to someone who lives somewhere else, but really wants to be a part of the culture that you're creating within your business. It's a fascinating topic, and it's happening. It's definitely happening. I know we see some of it in our practice with schools popping up in locations that we didn't necessarily anticipate, right? Because people are moving and they're moving with their families, and now they need more schools. And so there's some interesting trends to follow there.
Can I pick up on a couple of questions here, and I might wrap them together a bit, because there's some about culture and a good question about morale. How do we manage morale when there's challenges, there's home working, there's possibly pay cuts, there's different things going on, and culture and morale is something we've been really focusing on, isn't it? 5 years, 10 years, we've been working hard on that. And how do we address those big hits on culture?
I think there is a lot to say again that is linked to trust, but also, you know, kind of remind yourself, and this is the well-being approach, remind yourself your own values and why did you choose to work for that company in the first place. I think that should stay your motivation, because at the end of the day, you want your company to survive, to actually grow, to actually become more resilient from that. So if you still feel part of one and with your company, I think you are ready to be resilient for now and you know, accept maybe pay cut or different scenarios. But it is also where the company have to keep on pushing a little bit and making sure that trust, because it's a two ways, is also, you know, kind of given to the employees. So it's an interesting topic, that culture grows. And then again, I think, you know, the company should find a way to have this, and manager may not have time to keep the culture going. So I think maybe the repurposing of places, you know, so for example, right now, if you had a meeting room that can become a desk, so this is what we see right now into the return to work. When you talk about the redefining work, why don't we repurpose people that may have been front of house team that may not have, you know, current job actually right now, into more of a, you know, I'll use the WeWork term, but community manager, and try to keep that link actually between the company. They were embedded in your company as your front of house. So they know your company in and out, and they understand what you're trying to create, but they also know your employees. So why don't you try to repurpose, you know, the space as much as the people that you have, and try to create that sort of link? Because again, you know, manager may not have the time to have that sort of extra level, which is the company culture.
I think we'll also see companies, you know, really focusing on innovation, right? In a time of business crisis, you know, many will say, don't let a crisis go to waste, and use the opportunity. Your foundation is shaken. I mean, all of ours is. Let's use this as a time, not to just try to get back to normal, but try to get back to better, and really think about how innovation and how we can invigorate, you know, our offices and our culture and our business through innovation. And again, from our world in design, you know, what kind of spaces do you need to do that? And how can you be creative about maybe the leasehold that you have now and turning it into a place of innovation? And what do you need to support that as a way to boost morale, but also boost the bottom line? Because, you know, we can't forget that we're in an economic crisis, in addition to our health crisis and our social crisis that we have going on. And, you know, one thing that does help morale is feeling like you're contributing. So, you know, and don't limit that innovation to your thought leaders. You know, it's everyone's got something to contribute here. And so I think that's another one of those things that as people are returning to the workplace, I think we're going to see a lot of interest in innovation and on innovative spaces that help spur that along, because many companies are going to need a jump start, you know, as we move through this. So, you know, could be a really interesting design problem for us to solve around innovation.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. I think even read a question coming from Chris about even community. You know, back in the early days, they built, you know, communities around their factories, and I think they even still have that, an element of that in Asia. But one of the things that I was looking at was, even we're going back about our employees, how to give them a sense of feeling like they belong. And it's interesting since I've come back to work, is looking at that bubble of people that you work with. Who do you trust? You know, the shop down the street that you've always gotten your lunch from, do you still go there? Is that part of your protected bubble of life? And I think that's one thing that we certainly are seeing, is companies need to be involved in that bubble of protection. And does that mean that, can you get your entire team off-site to a facility that would accommodate all of them safely to be able to, have your company meetings again? I think that's going to be, constant positive reinforcement to your employees that, hey, we are going to get through this. We've all seen struggles. But I would like to just get some, Michele, what do you think about that idea of community? It links with what you were saying about having that level of trust, but also, the community that we go to at work, it extends beyond work. It extends to the places we shop, the people that we associate with, and how comfortable are we to get back with them again, with our friends, hang out, have a beer, enjoy life again, face to face. Give us some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the issue of community and we noticed it even, I'll give you an example, in our own company at Perkins and Will, as we first went into this crisis, what a lot of folks focused on is, what can we do to help, right? We immediately started repurposing all of our 3D printers to print face shields for local hospitals. This is not what we do as a business. This is not even our wheelhouse, but you could feel the need to help, right? And the need to contribute to community right away. And again, it's about, like, just what do we have? Let's look at our space. Let's look at our tools. What do we have? What can we do? And it was the most inspiring thing, as we were all at home and trying to figure out what's next, is to see our colleagues and to be able to contribute and say, look, we just shipped 500 new masks to a local Chicago hospital. And I think that's an organic thing and a grassroots thing that you can just feel. And it's about just supporting it. You don't need to encourage it. It's there. Just support it and make sure that everybody has what they need from a leadership standpoint, to do. Because I think it's a natural inclination that we should recognize, as you were saying.
Can I add to that, Michele? So from an organizational perspective, allowing the change for repurposing the facilities to create items to support the community, it could also be that organizations allow their staff members to spend some time doing some volunteering work and doing, maybe it's they're delivering food to kind of or working in food banks or something. That would also provide that sense of doing something. You want to be able to do something. You don't want to be just sitting there. You want to feel like you can contribute to people that are actually in need, and it gives you a sense of purpose.
Yeah. If they, heading towards the end of our time, we just wanted to put up a poll. There's so many angles to this, and it's an excellent discussion, and there is loads of questions which we can't hit on all of them. We wanted to just ask a question, which we'll put up now, about continuing the discussion and having an open, live, like a large roundtable discussion on these same topics in 1 week's time. So I'd be glad if the audience's answers on that as we progress and head towards a wrap up. I think for me, one of the big takeaways here is the many angles and the many levels of response that we're responsible to provide. A good question has come in, which is, have the trends and the changes just been accelerations due to the coronavirus? was it going to happen anyway? And it's accelerated those. It's an interesting one. Is it going to have a big effect on inner city offices and the whole rush hour, the whole mass transport thing? There could be long-term effects from that. And what are the more permanent design changes that will come out of this whole thing? That's a huge topic, but a really interesting one.
I definitely think a lot of what we're seeing is related to accelerating trends that are already out there. I think the biggest impact that we're going to see it really more immediately is around working from other locations or working remotely, and the impact of that. So many clients who, you know, in the past were like, well, maybe one day a week and maybe a few people, right? The entire conversation has changed. And even companies that had mobility programs in place are going to be rethinking them. So I think understanding how mobility fits into your overall business plan is going to be really, really key for most clients. And it sounds, to me, from the clients that I'm talking with, that is top of mind right now. And that has an impact on real estate, and it has an impact on the design of the workplace, how you allocate the space within the office. Do we have more social, more community, more things that support that aspect, now that we know we don't have to build one desk for every person? And I think it's a fascinating question, and it's going to change by company. Now that we know we can, should we? And how, you know, and how will we incorporate that in our workplace? To me, that'll be the next big design question for a lot of our clients.
I think like any program where normally you would have a change management that might, you know, take a bit of time and come sometime from the top with a business vision first, and then you kind of go down. I think it has come kind of like two ways, not just one way, but two ways now. And I think that's going to be a good change for that. I think it has definitely accelerated, and almost as we all said those words, you know, we all have been educating ourselves on so many different things. And to be fair, I think some of the leaders of businesses have now also educated themselves on that, isn't it? Or actually, this is okay to work from another location. And I think that's probably the trigger, that sort of extremely painful experience, and obviously very sad on so many levels, had kind of brought that forced change. And you look back and you're like, okay, actually, you know, we could do this. We can actually do this.
Any offers on the long term of screening? A lot of screening, physical protections coming in to reduce the need for distancing, and of course distancing's got quite an economic effect on floor plates. Where do you think physical screening is going to go in the longer term, Michele?
Like, you're talking about physical, like partition type things around folks, or health screening?
Well, I was thinking of both, actually.
Okay.
Any type of screening, and one thing we've introduced is some mobile screening and reconfigurable, like repurposable screening.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting question, and I guess we don't know the answer. We're the whole world's becoming experts in this new thing.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some to be determined around that. I mean, you know, the crisis that we're in right now is an airborne disease, and so there are lots of factors that go into, you know, transmission, and we're still learning, right? We're still learning lots of different things related to that. And it probably also has to do, the impact will be on how much actual health screening we do coming into the office. You know, whether or not you have symptoms, and whether or not we're wearing masks in the office really has a big impact on that transmission factor. So I think there's still so much to be learned in this area, and really modeled to understand. And back to an original point, what's the, you know, what are some of the things that are making a true impact? And let's also not forget that how people feel in your space is also equally as important. And so we want to make sure that people feel safer in their spaces as well. So it could be twofold.
Yeah. And I guess that's long-term solutions. I think maybe Maud, it was you said recently that the redefine, we're not really there yet, not in that phase.
I think every company is different. So I know some companies are already looking to this, but there were an urgency to do that return. I think most of the company are now either on the return or the enhanced part, which is, okay, I have return, but I don't want to make it look too, you know, not inviting and maybe too clinical. So I'm trying to make it like nice. So they're on their way, I think. And then soon, I think people like Michele and Daniella are going to be called into, and hopefully, you know, the FM industry always that's becoming more into the workplace is going to be called to look into this and say, okay, what's the experience we can create to kind of have everything, right? To have a safe environment, an attractive environment, a flexible environment. And, you know, we haven't quite touched this on this today, but there's a lot of technology that is going to come into that redefined space. Sadly, versus the cost effectiveness we talked about, you know, to start with, that might not be the case. You might have to have an investment on this, I think, on technology, but kind of knowing where your colleagues may be on that day would be a great opportunity, because, you know, if you knew that Michele jumped on a plane to London, you'll try to come into the office, isn't it? You'd be like, yeah, sure, you know, why not? And this is a very trust element, you know, where you say, of course, I don't mind to tell you where I am today, because I trust that this is going to be beneficial. So it's going to be an interesting part, but the redefine is definitely coming.
Yeah, I guess the time scale, again, it's best guesses, isn't it?
Best guesses.
Well, that's excellent. Daniella, what would your thoughts be in wrapping up?
We were talking about kind of longer term, and I'm thinking that technology is going to play a big role in, you know, defining what we should be kind of hopefully expecting to see what the workplace is going to be like in the future. You know, if we're going to be using technology such as sensors to understand how we can, you know, better utilize the AC systems, for example, increasing the air quality. I think the healthy building side of things, really looking at ensuring that, you know, elements of air, water, you know, the acoustics, all the environmental factors will help people to feel safer when they come in, hopefully. But there's also a need to ensure that people have continue to feel that they're cared for, that there's compassion there, and then they have that flexibility and they can work, they increase their working anywhere. And not feeling forced to do anything that they don't really want to do. I know obviously it does impact what type of job you're doing, but organisations maybe can consider looking at how they can support their employees in terms of whether they work from home or what their needs are, whether they go back into work again.
Yeah, that's excellent. We've had some really good points started off here. We've run that poll and 82% of respondents want to continue the conversation in a week's time. So we'll do that. We'll welcome all to join. Respect to everyone's very busy diaries. Back-to-back Zoom meetings have become a way of life. Gordon, have you got some thoughts to wrap this up as we draw to a close?
No, I think it's been an excellent conversation. You know, it's amazing how this is our 11th webinar and how much the conversation has moved forward over the last 11 weeks. And most certainly, I think we're all learning. And I think that's probably the biggest thing for me is keep an open mind. I think, you know, we are going to see changes, as Daniella's alluded to. There are going to be technology changes. You know, touchless faucets are going to become a new way of life in most commercial spaces. People are going to step that game up. And as Michele alluded to, you know, after 9/11, we all got our security hat on, thought about the way that we checked in when we were visiting a building. This is just another way of life that will become norm to us. But I think most importantly is we don't forget our people, and we don't forget, you know, our colleagues, our friends, you know, those that we work with in the industry. And that has been, I think, the important piece is that we're all still very human, and that human connection is important. So I've really enjoyed this, and I think as we, see the progression go forward in the next few weeks, we'll all look back and say, hey, we did it together. We pulled through with each other. So thanks for including me, Nick.
No, that's good. Thank you, Gordon. And I fully agree. I think a big point in all this is human needs haven't changed, and we're learning different ways to provide for them. So thank you to all our panelists. Thank you, Maud, and thanks to Mace, and thank you, Michelle, and thanks to Perkins and Will, and thanks very much, Daniella and Space Positive. Really good discussion, much to explore further, but we're on time, so we'll wrap up now, and thanks to all attendees as well, and bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you.